They formed the line at 0610. 20 Rangers, spread across the width of the access road in 2 staggered rows, weapons at patrol carry, boots in the red Afghan dust. Not a firing posture. A wall. The kind of human geometry that says you do not pass here without our permission, and we have decided you do not have it. The vehicle that had triggered the formation was a single tan Nabil V that had come down the mountain road from the north at 0558. Alone. No convoy, no escort, no IF markings on the hood panels that matched anything in the gate log for the morning. It had stopped 60 meters from the checkpoint and sat with its engine running for 90 seconds, which was long enough for Sergeant First Class Conrad Hale to make his decision and put his men across the road. The driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. She was alone. She was carrying nothing visible. She walked toward the checkpoint at a pace that was neither hurried nor cautious, the pace of someone who has done this before and found it manageable. She was in civilian clothes, which was wrong, and she was on a road that accessed a facility with a classification rating that meant civilian clothes were more than wrong. They were a specific category of problem that had a specific response procedure, and Hale knew the procedure and was prepared to execute it. She stopped 10 meters from the line. She looked at 20 Rangers looking at her. She looked at Hale specifically, the way people look at whoever is actually in charge, which she had identified correctly and immediately. "I need to get through," she said. "Not today," Hale said. She looked at the line again. She looked back at Hale. "I'm going to reach into my jacket," she said. Left inside pocket. "I'm going to do it slowly." "You're not going to do anything," Hale said. She did it anyway. Before we go any further, if this story already has you leaning in, hit that subscribe button right now and stay with me until the very last word. Drop a comment below telling me what city you are watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. Because what comes out of that jacket pocket is going to change everything that happens next. Major Sable Cowrie did not look like the person she was. This was, in the most direct professional sense, the entire point. She was 36 years old, medium height, with the kind of unremarkable physical presence that disappears in crowds and remembers faces and is never quite where you expect her to be when you look for her. Her hair was dark and pulled back simply. Her clothes were the clothes of someone passing through. Nothing new, nothing distinctive. A jacket that had been worn enough to lose its shape in the places that mattered for concealment. Her hands were still when they did not need to move, and precise when they did. She had been trained. Across 14 years of work in environments where being identified meant being killed, to occupy exactly as much space as the situation required, and not 1 inch more. She had driven 9 hours through the night, from a location she would not be listing in this conversation. She had not slept. She had a meeting at 0700 inside the facility that the 20 Rangers were currently preventing her from reaching, and the meeting could not be rescheduled, and the person she needed to meet with would be gone by 0800. And the information she was carrying, not in the vehicle, not in writing, in her memory, which was where she kept things that could not be allowed to exist anywhere else, had a window of operational relevance that was closing while she stood in the road. She understood why the Rangers were there. She approved of it, abstractly. This was a correctly functioning checkpoint executing correct procedure for an unidentified civilian vehicle approaching a classified facility. In a different context, she would have commended it. In this context, she needed it to be over in the next 4 minutes. She reached into her jacket. Hale's hand moved to his weapon. She produced a credential case. Black, hard-sided, government issue. The kind that looks identical to a dozen other kinds until you open it. And she opened it and held it out at arm's length toward Hale, facing him. At a distance he could read it without approaching. He looked at it. He read what it said. His expression did not change which was the training, but something behind his eyes recalibrated in the way eyes do when the information arriving does not match the information expected. "I need to verify this," he said. "I know," she said. "Make the call." Sergeant First Class Conrad Hale had been a ranger for 11 years. He had done 4 combat deployments, 2 personnel recovery operations, and 1 direct action mission in a location the Army still described in his file as undisclosed. He was good at his job with the specific durable goodness of a man who has been tested enough times that his competence has become structural, built into the way he stands and moves and thinks, not performed, just present. He had never seen a credential case like the one he was looking at. He had seen a lot of credential cases. He had seen Defense Intelligence Agency. He had seen Joint Special Operations Command. He had seen the credentials of 2 senators and 1 undersecretary of defense who had come through on separate congressional oversight visits. He had seen the credential of a CIA station chief who had been dressed as a plumber, which had been a memorable morning. He had not seen this one. The badge itself was standard format: photograph, name, agency designation, classification tier. The photograph matched the woman standing 10 meters in front of him. The name said Cowery, Sable E. The agency designation was a letter-number combination he did not recognize, which was itself information. Because Hale had made it his business over 11 years to recognize agency designations. And not recognizing one meant it was either fabricated or it was above what he had been cleared to know about. The classification tier was a color he had seen once before, on a document that had been shown to him briefly during a mission briefing in Bagram, and then immediately returned to a locked case. He looked at the woman. She was waiting, patiently, without the particular energy of someone who is hoping their bluff holds. He stepped back and got on the radio. The call took 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Hale made it to the facility's security officer, who made it to someone above the security officer, who connected to a number that was not in the facility directory and that answered on the second ring with a voice that gave no greeting, only verification request. Hale read the credential number from the case. There was a pause of 8 seconds. "Confirm," the voice said. "Clear passage. Full access. Log the time." The voice gave a secondary code that Hale was to record, and that would close the incident report without further documentation. "Copy," Hale said. He clicked off the radio. He looked at his men across the road. He looked at the woman standing 10 meters away in the dust of the access road at 0613 in the morning, who had not moved, had not spoken, had not shown any impatience, and who was watching him with pale gray eyes that had the quality of someone who already knew what the radio call was going to produce and was simply waiting for the procedure to complete. "Stand down," Hale said. The line opened. 20 Rangers stepped back and to the sides in 2 rows, creating a corridor down the center of the road. Not casually. With the precision of men who have just learned something about the situation that has reclassified it in their operational understanding. She walked through. She walked at the same pace she had walked at before, neither hurried nor cautious. And she did not look at the men on either side of her as she passed, not because she was dismissing them, but because she was already thinking about the 0700 meeting and the information she was carrying, and the window that was still closing. She was 8 meters past the line when she stopped. She turned. She looked at Hale. "Good checkpoint," she said. "Correct procedure. Don't change anything." He looked at her. She walked on, what Sergeant First Class Conrad Hale would spend the rest of the morning thinking about, in the fragments of time between duties that the morning allowed, was not the credential case or the radio call or the classification tier on the badge. It was the 9 hours. She had driven 9 hours through the night alone. That detail came out later, from the gate log timestamp and the last logged position of the WV from a forward operating base to the north. When the security officer assembled the access report and shared the relevant non-classified elements with Hale as the checkpoint commander, 9 hours, alone, through mountain roads in the dark, to make a 0700 meeting that could not be rescheduled. Hale had done hard things. He knew what hard things felt like from the inside and what they looked like from the outside, and they did not usually look like a woman in civilian clothes walking toward 20 armed rangers at the pace of someone running a routine errand. They looked like effort, like strain, like the visible cost of pushing past the comfortable edge. She had looked like none of those things. She had looked like someone for whom this was Tuesday. He wanted to know what the other days looked like. He filed it. Major Sable Cowrie had joined the Defense Intelligence Agency at 22, which was not unusual. She had been assigned to a field collection unit at 24, which was somewhat unusual. She had been selected for the program whose designation appeared on her credential case at 26, which was unusual enough that the selection board had discussed her file for 4 hours across 2 separate sessions before the director had closed the discussion by reading a single passage from her operational assessment and asking if anyone had a substantive objection. Nobody had. The program was not named in documents that existed outside of 3 secured facilities. Within those facilities, it was referred to by a 2-word designation that meant, in operational terms, human intelligence collection in denied areas under non-official cover, which was the formal way of saying that the people in this program went places they were not supposed to be, became people they were not, collected information that could not be collected any other way, and came back with it, or did not come back. Which was an outcome the program acknowledged in its orientation materials with a directness that most of the candidates found clarifying. Sable had been in 8 countries under non-official cover across 14 years. She had never not come back. This was not luck. The program selected against luck as a primary factor because luck was not scalable and not reliable and collapsed under operational pressure. And the environments this program operated in were nothing but operational pressure from entry to exfiltration. What the program selected for was the particular combination of cognitive flexibility, emotional regulation, spatial intelligence, and what the assessment rubric called adaptive presence. The capacity to be genuinely and completely whatever the situation required, without the seams showing, without the cost appearing on the surface, without the internal strain of performance leaking into the external presentation that other people read. Sable Cowrie had scored higher on adaptive presence than any candidate in the program's 12-year history. Her instructor during the selection course, a retired case officer named Edmund Park, who had spent 29 years doing this work, and had the specific, careful kindness of a man who has seen too much to be careless with people, had written in her final assessment, "She does not perform calm. She is calm. This is not something we teach. This is something she brought." She had kept that assessment in a file she did not often open. Edmund Park had died in a vehicle accident outside of Amman 4 years ago, which was what the official report said, and she had been in a hotel room in a city she could not name in this account when she received the notification, and she had sat with it for 20 minutes, and then she had gone to her next meeting, because there was always a next meeting, and he would have said go. She went. The facility inside the checkpoint was a low, sand-colored collection of connected buildings that had the functional anonymity of every military intelligence installation she had ever entered. Nothing decorative, nothing wasted, everything oriented toward the work. The security officer met her at the inner gate. A young captain named Flores, who had been briefed on her arrival and who handled it with the professional composure of someone working hard to appear unsurprised. She followed him through 2 badge access corridors to a conference room where a man was standing with his back to the door looking at a map on the wall. He turned when she entered. Brigadier General Thomas Wick was 53, compact, with the close-cropped gray hair and the careful economy of movement that senior officers develop across decades of moving through high-pressure rooms. He had been the program's oversight commander for 2 years. He had read her complete file and had met her once before, briefly, in a context he was not going to reference in this room. He looked at her. "You drove 9 hours," he said. "The flight options were problematic," she said. He did not ask her to elaborate, because the file she had filed on the flight options was already in his secure inbox, and he would read it later, and it would be, as her reports invariably were, precise and complete, and written in the particular spare prose of someone who has learned that every unnecessary word is a liability. "Sit down," he said. She sat. He sat across from her. "Tell me what you have," he said. She told him. She talked for 22 minutes, without notes, without prompts, reconstructing from memory a detailed account of what she had collected across the previous 19 days in a location that would not be in this account, because the location was still active and the people she had been meeting with were still alive, and those two facts were connected in ways that required ongoing protection. Wick listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You verified the secondary source," he said. 3 times, she said. Different contexts, different framings, consistent each time, and the timeline. 72 hours, she said, outer bound. Could be less. He nodded. He stood and went to the secure phone on the wall credenza and made a call that she was not party to, which was correct. She had delivered what she had, and what happened to the information now was above her operational lane and below her concern. Her job was collection and delivery. The job was done. She looked at the map on the wall while he called. She looked at the roads and the ridgelines and the borders and the distances, and she thought about the drive back, which she would begin in 30 minutes, and about the sleep she would get somewhere around the midpoint. Pulled off the road, engine running for warmth, 45 minutes in the reclined seat that would be enough to continue safely. She had slept in worse configurations. Wick finished the call. He came back to the table and stood, which meant the meeting was concluding, and she stood too. "The checkpoint delayed you," he said. 4 minutes, she said, within margin. "Hale's a good ENCO," Wick said. "He ran the procedure correctly." "He did," she agreed. Wick looked at her with the particular expression of a senior officer who has something to say that does not fit cleanly into the professional register of the conversation. "You know what he saw when he opened that case?" Wick said. "I know what's on the badge," she said. "He'll think about it for a while," Wick said. She picked up her jacket from the back of the chair. "Good," she said. "Maybe he'll apply." Wick almost smiled. It was brief and carefully managed, the smile of a man who has learned to keep them small. She left. At the checkpoint, the road was clear. The 20 Rangers had resumed their positions. The line reformed, the morning returning to its operational rhythm. Hale was at the gate log, entering the secondary verification code, when the tan WE came back through heading north. He looked up. She was already past. He watched the vehicle until it rounded the first curve of the mountain road and disappeared behind the rock face, trailing a thin line of red dust that hung in the still morning air and then slowly dispersed, leaving the road exactly as it had been before she arrived. Corporal Denny Walsh came to stand beside him. "Who was she?" Walsh said. Hale thought about the credential case. The color of the classification tier, the voice on the radio that had answered on the second ring and given no greeting. The 9 hours through the night. The pace she had walked through 20 armed men. The pace of someone for whom this was Tuesday. "Someone doing something important," he said. Walsh looked at the road. "How do you know?" he said. Hale thought about it. "Because nobody who wasn't drove 9 hours alone to make a meeting that couldn't wait," he said. He went back to the log. He entered the code. He closed the report. There is a category of service that the public record does not contain, and the ceremonies do not honor, and the citations do not name, because the work requires its own invisibility to function. And the invisibility is not a sacrifice layered on top of the work, but is the work itself, inseparable from it. The condition under which everything else becomes possible. Sable Cowrie did not need 20 rangers to know her name or her record or the classification tier on the badge in her jacket pocket. She needed to get through the checkpoint in time for the meeting. And she needed the meeting to produce the information transfer. And she needed the information transfer to close the window before it closed on its own with the information still inside it. That was the mission. That was always the mission. The credential was not a trophy or a proof or a declaration. It was a tool, like the vehicle and the road and the 19 days of careful, patient, dangerous work that had produced the 22 minutes of precise, unadorned testimony that Brigadier General Thomas Wick would act on before the day was over. The people who do the work the world cannot see are not asking to be seen. They are asking for the checkpoint to open and the clock to stop and the window to hold for 4 more minutes while the procedure completes. That is enough. That has always been enough. And then they drive back the way they came, alone, through the mountains, in the dark, already thinking about the next one.